Canada, the Great White North, a nation mainly known for hockey, poutine, and brutal winters. But much like its downstairs neighbor, the United States, Canada sees plenty of tornadoes each year. While the majority of them churn harmlessly across the prairie, several have cemented themselves into weather history on the same level as even some of the most violent tornadoes seen in the States. What makes Canada similar to the United States when it comes to tornadoes is the geography. Much like the States, the Rocky Mountains have their northward extent up into western Alberta and British Columbia, while to the east, Great Plains sweep eastward through the provinces of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. However, what separates the US from Canada is the proximity to the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf is the prime source for the warm, moist air masses needed for thunderstorms, especially in the early storm season. The United States sees its peak season from April through June, while Canada, on the other hand, relies on the natural moisture from farm crops in the summer months. These similarities allow for Canada to see routine tornadic setups in the summer months, much like the United States sees in the spring. Though Canada might not see quite as many tornadoes as the United States sees, they still get their strong to violent tornadoes, most recently as of last year. On July 1st, 2023, an EF4 tornado would terrorize the outskirts of the small Albertan town of Didsbury. While particularly photogenic for storm chasers like Aaron Jajak, it was unmerciful for several farmsteads in its path. 3 in particular were completely swept away, earning this tornado an EF4 rating with estimated peak winds of 170 miles per... Oh wait, sorry Canada, 275 kilometers per hour. This tornado would ultimately become the furthest west violent tornado on the North American continent, cementing its place in tornado history. This wasn't Alberta's first run-in with a violent tornado. Dead center in the province is the capital city of Edmonton. The summer of 1987 was a summer of celebration for the city. This far north brings with it many hours of daylight. This also means more early hours of peak heating for thunderstorms. On Friday, July 31st, Environment Canada, Canada's agency for weather monitoring, noted a particularly strong severe weather setup over Alberta. A large, negatively tilted trough was ejecting across Canada's prairie, spawning a strong surface low off of the Canadian Rockies. This deepening low surged moisture northwards, with dew points reaching near record highs. By early afternoon, daytime heating had already taken great effect, initiating a dominant supercell that plowed north towards Edmonton. At 3 p.m. local time, a tornado planted south of Beaumont, an Edmonton suburb. Churning due north, farmsteads were the first victims of the tornado before entering the outskirts of Edmonton proper. Transitioning from a multi-vortex structure into a stout stovepipe, Steve Simon snaps a shot of the violent tornado as it enters the Sherwood Park neighborhood. At F4 intensity, the tornado would lay waste to many industrial structures, but the most devastating effects would be felt at the Evergreen Mobile Home Park, where 200 mobile homes wouldn't stand a chance against the violent tornado. The tornado would wither and rope out northeast of Edmonton, and after an hour of terror, the lives of 27 were lost and over 300 were injured. This storm would go down as the second deadliest tornado in Canada's history, with the first place title belonging to another province capital. On June 30th, 1912, Regina, Saskatchewan would be subjected to its own violent tornado. With the analysis of damage from photographs years later, peak winds were estimated to be at 400 kilometers per hour. It would cause 28 fatalities and 300 injuries, as weather technology was primitive, meaning no warning for the people of Regina. The Great Prairie of Canada isn't the only region of the country that sees bouts of tornado activity. Further to the east are the flat expanses of southern Ontario. Nestled between 3 of the Great Lakes is this stretch of farmland that is routinely subjected to relatively weak tornadoes throughout the summer months. However, on May 31st, 1985, one of the most iconic tornado outbreaks in weather history would impact the region. While history likes to focus on the tornadoes that ravaged Ohio and Pennsylvania just over the border, a northern storm regime close to the abnormally strong surface low would support multiple strong to violent tornadoes that would make their presence felt on Ontario. At 4:15 local time, a tornado would touch down northwest of the town of Arthur, tracking east-northeast. The twister would plow through the center of Grand Valley, Ontario, flattening multiple homes and churches. Next in the tornado's crosshairs was Orangeville, where the northern side of town would take the hit as a shopping center and water tower were destroyed. The Grand Valley tornado would earn an F4 rating, going down as the longest-tracked tornado in Canadian history, with a path length of 116 kilometers. 6 lives were claimed by the Grand Valley twister. This wasn't the only F4 tornado in Ontario that day. Further north, the city of Barrie would be subjected to its own violent tornado. Around 5 p.m., the tornado would touch down in the Arda Bluffs neighborhood and would churn through much of the southern Barrie suburbs and neighborhoods before moving onto the water of Lake Simcoe. While lasting for 10 kilometers on land, in that span, the tornado claimed the lives of 8, injured over 150, and caused $375 million of damage adjusted for inflation. While we've gone from the furthest west violent tornado in North America to the flats of Ontario, all of the tornadoes discussed so far have earned a 4 on the enhanced or regular Fujita scales. However, we all know that the scale does not end in 4, leaving the most infamous Canadian tornado for last. On June 22, 2007, the small town of Elie, Manitoba, would become the site of possibly the most famous tornado image ever captured, but at a price. Touching down at 6:25 local time, the tornado would meander its way to the ground just north of the Trans-Canada Highway. Most top-end tornadoes take on a wedge-like structure, wider than they are tall. Elie, on the other hand, would morph into a slender tube, slowly wandering southeast. The slow motion would allow for the tornado to snake around, not following a predictable path as it would loop several times west of town. While tall and slender in appearance, at the ground, the Elie tornado was a grinder with no mercy. It would clean 4 houses off their foundations, with one of them so violent it snapped anchor bolts axially rather than the typical shear failure. After completing one final loop, the tornado would rope out 35 minutes after its formation, fortunately not causing any injuries or fatalities. Environment Canada would conduct an extensive survey and analysis of the damage, coming to a final conclusion months later, rating the Elie tornado as an F5 with estimated winds of 420 to 510 kilometers per hour. To this day, in 2024, the Elie Manitoba F5 remains the only 5 to ever be assigned to a Canadian tornado on the Fujita or enhanced Fujita scales. While tornadoes in Canada may not happen at the same frequency as they do here in the United States, many of them have managed to find their way into weather history. So for my friends up north, be sure to stay safe out there when it comes to severe weather. Hey everyone, how's it going? One last thing for this video. We now have a Patreon page linked down below. Perks include bonus content, first video is live now there, merch discounts, and input from you guys to the next June 1st videos. This type of monetary support will help us develop things like this, some of our sensor prototypes that we want to use in the field to better understand tornadoes. That's what June 1st was originally founded upon, and we want to get back to doing that work. So this type of support will allow us to become more independent and put money into that and allow us to do more content, more research-based stuff, and ultimately progress June 1st to the next level. Your support would help us immensely. So if you are at all interested in those bonus things, check the description below. Thanks guys, take it easy. We'll see you in the next one.